Close your eyes. Imagine waking before sunrise, not because of an alarm, but because cold air slips through the cracks of a timber wall. Smoke from last night's fire still hangs faintly in the room. The floor beneath you is hard-packed earth. Straw rustles as you shift your weight. It is the year 1347. You do not know that number. You measure time by harvests, by winters, by the reign of a distant king whose face you have never seen. If you are alive in this moment, you are most likely a peasant. Your hands are rough, your back aches even in youth. Life expectancy is short, but you do not think about that. Everyone you know lives this way. Hardship is not tragedy, it is normal. You step outside, the village is small, a few dozen houses. A church tower rising above them, the only stone structure for miles. Fields stretch outward, divided into long strips. Beyond them, forest. You owe labor to your lord. You owe loyalty to your king. You owe 10% of what you grow to the church. These obligations are not debated. They are simply part of the structure of the world as fixed as the sky. Disease exists, of course. Fevers come and go. Children die. Women sometimes do not survive childbirth. But sickness is familiar, seasonal. It moves through a household and leaves. Nothing prepares you for what is coming. Far away, farther than you can imagine, caravans move across Central Asia. Traders travel the Silk Road. Ships dock in black seaports. In the holds of those ships, rats nest in grain sacks. Fleas live on the rats. And inside those fleas, invisible and silent, bacteria multiply. A merchant speaks of a port city where ships arrived filled with dead men. Another claims entire households in distant lands have vanished within days. The stories are dramatic, almost theatrical. You laugh nervously. Every generation believes it lives near the end of days. Famine has come before. War has come before. Why would this be different? Life continues. You plant crops. You repair fences. You attend mass. You gossip. You worry about weather. Then more stories arrive. In southern ports, people are said to die within 3 days of falling ill. Dark swellings appear on their bodies. Blood seeps beneath their skin. Some cough and die within hours. The illness spreads quickly, too quickly. Still, it feels far away. Distance creates denial. You have never left your region. The idea that something across the sea could reach your door feels abstract, but trade does not stop. Ships continue sailing. Merchants continue traveling. Goods continue moving. And with them, something else moves silently. By the time you hear that the sickness has reached a major city within your own country, fear begins to take shape. The tone of conversation changes. It is no longer dramatic storytelling. It is uneasy speculation. What if it comes here? The priest assures everyone that God protects the faithful. You want to believe him. But the bells begin ringing more often in neighboring towns. Funeral bells. One day a traveler passes through your village. He looks exhausted, thinner than he should be. He speaks of streets lined with bodies, of carts collecting the dead at dawn, of priests overwhelmed, of families abandoning the sick. His voice trembles. Now the fear becomes real. That night, you lie awake longer than usual. Every small ache in your body feels suspicious. Every distant cough seems louder. You tell yourself it is only a story. But something has shifted. A week later, someone in your village develops a fever. It is an ordinary enough thing at first. People fall ill all the time. But this fever rises quickly. The man grows delirious. Painful swellings appear in his groin. You have never seen swellings like that before. Within 3 days, he is dead. There is no time to understand. Only time to bury. The bells ring. And for the first time, you feel something you have never felt before. Not hunger, not cold, not even grief. You feel the quiet approach of something unstoppable. The plague has arrived. And your life, whether long or short, will never be the same again. The first death unsettles the village. The second terrifies it. You try to tell yourself the first man was weak. Perhaps he had always been frail. Perhaps it was God's will. But when his wife collapses only days after burying him, denial begins to crack. Her fever is worse. You visit briefly, standing near the doorway, not daring to step fully inside. The air feels thick, sour with sweat and sickness. She grips her abdomen and groans. By evening, the swellings appear beneath her arms, hard, dark, unnatural. You have seen wounds before. You have seen infections. This is different. The priest comes to administer last rites. He looks pale. He tries to speak calmly, but his eyes betray him. She dies before sunrise. Now the whispers begin. It spreads. No one knows how. Some say it travels through breath. Others say through touch. Others insist it is carried in foul air rising from the earth. A few claim it is punishment for hidden sins within the village. You begin noticing rats. You have always had rats. They nest in grain stores and scurry through alleyways at night. But now, perhaps because fear sharpens your senses, you see them more often. One lies dead near the well. You do not think much of it. Within days, 2 more villagers fall ill. A boy of 12, a miller in his 40s. The boy's mother refuses to let anyone inside the house. She believes isolation will save him. You hear his cries through the thin wooden walls. They grow weaker each day. On the 3rd day, they stop. The miller attempts to continue working at first. He insists it is only a fever. By the time he cannot stand, the swelling in his neck is visible from across the room. You stop visiting the sick. Everyone does. Doors remain closed. Windows shuttered. Conversations take place at a distance. Fear changes behavior quickly. The marketplace empties. Fewer people gather for trade. Some families begin storing what food they can. Others consider fleeing to relatives in distant villages. But news arrives that those villages are suffering too. There is no safe direction. The gravedigger works without rest. Soon he cannot keep pace. Graves are dug larger now. 2 bodies, then 3, buried together. You begin counting the days differently, not by sunrise and sunset, but by how many are still alive. Each morning becomes a survey. Who is missing? Who did not open their door? Who did not light their hearth? The priest announces extra prayers. He speaks of repentance. He urges confession. Some villagers fall to their knees publicly, begging forgiveness for forgotten sins. Others grow quiet. You overhear arguments. If God is just, why would he kill children? Perhaps we are all guilty. Perhaps this is the end. At night, sleep becomes shallow. You wake at the smallest sound. Your body feels suspiciously warm even when it is not. A headache becomes a threat. A sore throat becomes an omen. You examine your skin daily, searching. One morning, you find a tender spot beneath your arm. Your breath catches. You press it gently. It hurts. Your heart pounds so loudly, you are certain others can hear it. You wait. Hours pass. The pain does not worsen. By evening, it fades. Relief washes over you, thin and fragile. You realize how quickly fear has overtaken reason. Every sensation feels like a verdict. The blacksmith dies next. He was strong, broad-shouldered, younger than you. Strength does not matter. That realization spreads faster than the disease. The wealthy are not spared. The pious are not spared. The young are not spared. Death feels random. And randomness is more terrifying than punishment. Because punishment implies order. This feels like chaos. Soon the church bells ring so often they lose meaning. At first, each toll demanded attention. Now they blur together, part of the village's constant soundscape. The smell changes too. Fresh graves disturb the earth. Bodies buried hastily do not always stay covered. Animals dig. Some families stop reporting deaths immediately, hoping to avoid attention, hoping to avoid having their homes marked. Yes, marked. In nearby towns, houses of the sick are painted or sealed. In some places, guards prevent families from leaving once illness appears inside. Containment through force. Your village debates doing the same. Fear begins turning neighbor against neighbor. You find yourself evaluating everyone you see. Is that cough new? Why does she look pale? Why is his door still closed? Suspicion becomes instinct. One evening, smoke rises from a distant cottage, not from the chimney, from the structure itself. A family has chosen to burn their own home after the father died inside. They believe fire will cleanse what they cannot see. The flames crackle into the dark sky. You watch from a distance, the heat brushing your face. And for the first time, you understand something clearly. This is not a passing illness. This is something that will redefine your life, however long that life may be. The plague is no longer rumor. It is inside your walls. And it is not leaving. There is no single moment when the world ends. Instead, it erodes. At first, you count the dead individually. You remember each name. You recall their faces, their habits, their voices. But as days turn into weeks, something changes. The deaths begin to blur together. You stop asking who died. You start asking who is left. The rhythm of life collapses quietly. The fields remain unharvested. Tools lie where they were dropped. A cart stands abandoned in the mud, one wheel slowly sinking deeper each day. You realize something terrifying. No one is coming to fix this. There is no authority riding in from the capital. No physician with miraculous knowledge. This is not a crisis with an endpoint you can see. It is not a storm you can wait out. It is a season without shape. Each morning, you wake expecting the fever to strike. You listen to your own breathing before you rise. You test your limbs carefully, as if sudden movement might reveal hidden pain. You are afraid of your own body. The village well grows quiet. Children no longer play near it. Their laughter once filled the square. Now the only sounds are distant bells and the low murmur of private prayers spoken behind closed doors. You notice how quickly silence becomes normal, how quickly fear rewrites routine. You begin avoiding eye contact, not because you distrust your neighbors, but because you are measuring them. Is their skin pale? Are they sweating? Did they cough just now? You hate that you think this way. But survival demands vigilance. One afternoon, the priest does not emerge from the church. The doors remain shut longer than usual. When they finally open, 2 men carry him out. His face is gray. Even faith is not immune. That realization spreads like cold water through your chest. If God's servant can die, what protection remains? Some villagers begin speaking of fleeing. Not to nearby towns, those are infected too, but into the forest, into isolation. A few families gather what food they can carry and leave before dawn. They do not say goodbye. You watch them disappear between the trees. You do not know if they are escaping death or walking toward it. The gravedigger collapses 3 days later. There is no one eager to replace him. For the first time, bodies remain in homes longer than a day. The smell spreads. It creeps beneath doors and lingers in the air. It settles into clothing. You begin tying cloth around your face when you walk outside. You do not know if it helps, but doing nothing feels worse. Rumors multiply. Some say the disease travels through glances. Others say certain herbs can protect you. A woman claims she dreamed of angels marking the doomed. Desperation makes every theory sound possible. Then comes the day you stop expecting improvement. Until now, part of you believed this would crest and fall like past sicknesses, but the numbers do not slow. Every household has been touched. You look down the row of cottages and count how many doors remain unopened. Too many. You realize something heavier than fear. This may last months, perhaps years. It may return again and again. The idea settles slowly like ash. Your future shrinks. You stop speaking of next harvest. You stop planning repairs for spring. You think only of tomorrow. That night, the bells ring 3 times in quick succession. Not spaced apart, not ceremonially. Just 3 deaths in rapid order. The sound echoes longer than usual. You sit in the dark listening, and you understand. This is not stopping. You imagine the map of your country. Cities burning with fever. Roads carrying merchants who unknowingly carried death. Ports receiving ships filled with silence. The sickness is not local. It is everywhere. There is nowhere untouched. Something inside you hardens. Not cruelty, not yet, but a narrowing. You conserve energy. You speak less. You move carefully. You begin rationing food more strictly. You store water indoors. You prepare for siege, except the enemy cannot be seen. And in that quiet preparation, you cross an invisible threshold. You are no longer waiting for rescue. You are surviving. The plague is not an interruption. It is your reality now. And you must learn how to live inside it. Fear does not remain pure for long. At first it is survival, instinct, self-preservation. But when death continues without explanation, fear begins searching for shape. It wants a cause. It wants a reason. Because randomness is unbearable. If the plague is simply chance, then no one is safe. But if it is punishment, then perhaps it can be corrected. If it is someone's fault, then perhaps it can be stopped. This is how blame is born, not from logic, from desperation. Whispers begin quietly. Perhaps the village angered God. Perhaps someone committed a hidden sin. Perhaps an outsider carried corruption into your midst. You notice how quickly suspicion sharpens, how easily grief becomes accusation. A traveling merchant is refused shelter. He protests that he is healthy. No one listens. The doors remain closed. You watch from a distance as he walks back toward the road alone. You feel relief, and then shame for feeling it. In nearby towns, the stories grow darker. Certain groups are blamed: minorities, foreigners, those who pray differently. Some are accused of poisoning wells, of conspiring with evil forces. There is no evidence, only fear. Violence erupts in places you have heard of but never seen. Communities are attacked, homes burned, people killed not by plague but by neighbors. The sickness spreads through bodies. Hatred spreads through minds. Both move quickly. Your village has not yet descended into violence, but tension hums beneath every conversation. You hear raised voices near the well. Someone claims a widow's strange herbs brought the illness. She has always lived quietly at the edge of town. Now she is watched. You ask yourself dangerous questions. Would blaming someone make this easier? Would anger feel better than helplessness? You understand the temptation to name an enemy, to believe the disaster has intention. The priest speaks against violence during Mass. He reminds everyone that suffering is not solved with cruelty. Some nod. Others avoid his gaze. Faith is beginning to fracture under pressure. A boy throws a stone at the widow's door. No one stops him. That is how it begins, not with armies, with small permissions, with silence where protest should be. You feel the village changing, not just from death, from distrust. Neighbors who once shared bread now share suspicion. Kindness becomes rare currency. Self-interest becomes instinct. One night, shouting erupts. A group gathers outside the widow's cottage. Accusations fly. She opens the door, trembling, swearing innocence. You stand at the edge of the crowd. You do not step forward. The moment hangs heavy. Someone suggests driving her out. Another suggests worse, but then a cough interrupts. One of the loudest accusers doubles over, clutching his chest. The crowd falls silent. Fear shifts direction instantly. Blame dissolves when illness becomes personal. The crowd disperses quickly. No one helps the coughing man. By morning he has a fever. The widow remains. But the seed of suspicion has been planted. You return home shaken. The plague is not only killing bodies, it is testing morality. It is exposing what fear can do to ordinary people, and you begin to understand something else. The danger is not only the disease, it is what the disease awakens in human hearts. Imagine it now. You wake with fatigue that feels heavier than usual. Your limbs ache. Your head pounds. At first, you tell yourself it is exhaustion from labor, perhaps a chill from the early morning air, but the pain escalates. A fever rises quickly, like fire inside your veins. By midday, you notice swellings. They appear under your arms, in your groin, or at the base of your neck. They are dark, angry, tender to the touch. You have never felt anything like it. Your stomach tightens. Your breath catches. You remember the stories, the names, the bodies. You pray, perhaps for strength, perhaps for mercy, perhaps for understanding. Your family is near. They fear the contagion. They do not know whether to stay or flee. Some cling to you. Others whisper behind closed doors, debating their own safety. You feel both loved and alone. By the second day, delirium begins. Heat scorches your mind. You cannot focus. Shadows move in the corners of your vision. Every sound feels amplified, every touch painful. Pain is no longer merely physical. It invades your awareness, claiming your world. The priest arrives for last rites. You listen to prayers murmured over and over. His voice is calm, but you see fear in his eyes. You realize the sacred is not immune. Faith does not guarantee survival. By the third day, your body convulses. Coughs rack your chest. Some expel blood. Your mouth is dry, your tongue thick. You taste iron and fear. You are losing control. The fever dominates. Your vision narrows to the pain. And still it continues. Family members must make decisions. Do they care for you, risking themselves? Do they isolate you, leaving you alone? Some stay and suffer beside the patient. Some leave, choosing survival over compassion. You do not judge them, for instinct drives fear. The swelling sometimes ruptures, draining. It offers little relief, but a few survive this stage. You may be among them. Or you may not. Survival is random. It depends on chance, on the peculiarities of your body, on the bacteria you cannot see. If you survive, you awaken weakened but alive. Your body is fragile, your mind haunted. You remember every scream, every fevered hallucination. The world is both unchanged and utterly transformed. You are among the lucky few. And yet, luck leaves scars. If you die, you do not know it yet. Your family buries you quickly, sometimes in mass graves. The priest may not arrive. Your neighbors may look away. Fear dictates action more than mourning. Death is practical, brutal, and unceremonious. Whether you live or die, life continues around you. Others fall ill, others die, others flee. You witness the relentless march of the disease. It is not selective, it is not moral. It is unstoppable, and it is intimately close. If you survive multiple waves, as the plague will return again and again, you carry permanent marks. Physically, some scars remain. Mentally, all survivors are changed. You measure time in outbreaks, before the plague, after the plague, the second wave. Every moment is shadowed by mortality. Your relationships are altered, loved ones lost, neighbors gone. The priest who offered last rites is dead. Communities are fractured, trust is scarce. But life persists, stubborn and relentless. Survival is a testament to resilience, not certainty. You have learned fear, you have learned grief. You have learned the randomness of death. You have also learned the fragility of morality, the limits of knowledge, and the astonishing capacity of humans to endure. Your survival is a story, your existence an example. And in the silence after the fever breaks, you understand the truth. The plague is not a single enemy. It is a mirror. It shows the worst and the best of people. It tests every instinct, every belief. And if you are alive, you carry both grief and insight. The plague does not only attack bodies, it attacks systems. It weakens structures that once felt permanent. You begin to notice absences not just in homes, but in roles. The baker is gone. The blacksmith is gone. The reeve who collected taxes no longer walks the roads. Tasks once taken for granted now remain undone. Bread grows scarce because fewer hands grind grain. Tools break and remain broken. Animals wander untended in fields. The delicate web of labor that held society together begins to tear. You realize how interconnected everything was. One death leads to another problem. 10 deaths lead to paralysis. Half the village gone means half the work unfinished. The land does not wait for recovery. Crops rot if not harvested. Winter does not delay. Lords begin to panic. Their estates depend on peasant labor. Without workers, wealth withers. Some attempt to demand the same obligations as before, but there are fewer of you now. And that changes everything. For the first time, labor has power. If you survived, your work is valuable. You may demand wages instead of unpaid duty. You may negotiate. You may even leave for another village offering better conditions. This possibility would have been unthinkable before. Monasteries stand half empty. Church bells ring with mechanical regularity, but something intangible has shifted. Authority no longer feels absolute. Questions linger in minds that once accepted without hesitation. Trade slows dramatically. Roads are less traveled. Markets shrink. Foreign merchants are viewed with suspicion. Isolation increases. Communities turn inward, wary of outsiders. In cities, the collapse is sharper. Crowded streets accelerate contagion. Entire districts fall silent. Shops close permanently. Artisans die without apprentices. Knowledge vanishes with them. Yet amid collapse, opportunity appears. Vacant land becomes available. Survivors inherit property unexpectedly. Women, widowed in large numbers, sometimes manage estates or businesses. Social mobility increases in subtle ways. The rigid order begins to bend. You might find yourself in possession of land that once seemed unattainable. You might move to a town seeking better wages. You might renegotiate your obligations. The old hierarchies weaken, not immediately, but undeniably. The plague has reduced population drastically. In some regions, nearly half are gone. This demographic shock ripples outward for decades. Marriage patterns shift. Family structures change. Communities rebuild smaller, leaner. The world feels emptier. Forests reclaim abandoned fields. Wild animals wander closer to settlements. Silence stretches across landscapes once filled with labor. Nature advances where humanity retreats. And in this altered world, you stand. If you survived, you are both witness and participant. You are living through the collapse of one era and the slow emergence of another. The plague destroys, but it also transforms. And you are part of that transformation. When death becomes constant, belief becomes urgent. You search for meaning the way a drowning person searches for air. Why is this happening? Is it punishment? A test? A sign of the end times? Silence from heaven feels heavier than thunder. The church teaches that suffering has purpose, that pain refines the soul, that earthly life is temporary. You have believed these things since childhood. But belief feels different when graves multiply faster than prayers. Mass continues, though attendance shrinks. Some stay away in fear of contagion. Others attend more faithfully than ever, desperate for reassurance. Candles flicker in dim churches filled with whispered pleas. Every cough echoes loudly. You kneel longer than before. You confess sins you once considered trivial. Impatience, envy, anger. If God is measuring humanity, you want your record clean. Fear sharpens conscience, but doubt creeps in quietly. If the righteous die alongside the corrupt, what does that mean? If children perish before committing sin, what justice is being served? These questions are dangerous. You rarely voice them aloud. Some communities embrace extreme displays of devotion. Groups of penitents travel between towns, whipping themselves publicly. They believe visible suffering will appease divine wrath. Blood runs down their backs as they chant. Crowds gather, horrified and fascinated. You watch them pass through your region. Their faces are intense, feverish with conviction. For a moment, their certainty is comforting. Action feels better than helpless waiting. Pain feels purposeful. Yet the plague does not slow. Even the most devoted fall ill. Even the most fervent prayers do not alter its course. This realization fractures confidence, not always openly, but internally some turn toward mysticism. Dreams and visions gain significance. A strange coincidence becomes divine message. A spared household becomes proof of favor. Patterns are drawn where none may exist. The human mind craves order. Others withdraw from religion quietly. They attend less frequently. They pray less fervently. Not out of rebellion, but exhaustion. Faith requires energy. Grief consumes it. The priest himself struggles. You see it in his posture. He buries friends weekly. He comforts widows daily. He performs last rites so often that words blur together. His certainty softens, and yet faith does not disappear. For many, it deepens. In the face of uncontrollable death, eternity becomes more real. Heaven feels closer than tomorrow. Belief becomes not explanation, but endurance. You begin to understand something subtle. Faith is not about stopping the plague. It is about surviving it emotionally. It provides structure where reality offers chaos. It offers hope when statistics offer none. Still, the questions remain. Why this village? Why this year? Why this child? No answer satisfies fully. You learn to live with unanswered questions, to accept mystery as part of existence. The plague reshapes your understanding of God, destiny, and justice. It strips certainty. It tests devotion. But it also reveals resilience. Whether faith strengthens or weakens, it changes. And so do you. If you are a child when the plague arrives, you do not understand statistics. You understand absence. You understand that your mother's hands feel hotter than usual. You understand that adults whisper more, that doors close more often, that laughter has become rare. You notice routines changing. You are told not to play near other children, not to wander, not to touch. The rules feel sudden and unexplained. The world shrinks to the size of your home. You hear words like fever, swelling, burial. You do not fully grasp them, but you recognize fear in your father's eyes. And that frightens you more than the words. Children read emotion faster than reason. If a parent falls ill, confusion mixes with terror. One day they are strong, the next they cannot stand. You are told to stay back. You are told not to touch. Obedience feels like betrayal. If they die, the change is immediate. There is no long ceremony, no extended mourning. Burial is swift. The house grows quieter overnight, and you are expected to adapt. Some children are sent away to relatives. Others are taken in by neighbors. Some are left alone entirely. Orphanhood becomes common. Responsibility arrives early. You may inherit land before you understand ownership. You may manage animals before you understand accounts. Childhood shortens. Play becomes rare. Survival becomes education. If you survive into adulthood, your memories are fragmented. You remember smells, the sound of bells, the tension in the air. But timelines blur. The play becomes a backdrop to your earliest recollections. You grow up knowing death intimately. It is not abstract. It is not distant. It is something that visited your home, that shaped your family, that defined your generation. And yet, children adapt. You still laugh sometimes. You still find games to play indoors. Resilience appears in small ways. Human instinct leans toward life. Even in catastrophe, a generation raised in plague sees the world differently. Authority is questioned more easily. Security feels fragile. Opportunity, when it appears later, feels less guaranteed, but more urgent. You may grow into an adult with sharper independence. Fewer illusions, greater practicality. You have already witnessed collapse. Ambition grows from survival. If the plague returns, as it will, you recognize the signs earlier. You do not dismiss rumors. You prepare quickly. Experience replaces denial. Fear becomes familiar, not shocking. The psychological imprint remains lifelong. You may flinch at the sound of certain bells. You may react strongly to illness around you. Your childhood shaped your nervous system. Trauma lingers quietly. And yet from this generation will come builders, merchants, thinkers, reformers. Those who grew up in the shadow of death will reshape the future. Because survival, especially in youth, creates a different kind of strength. If you fall ill in the 14th century, medicine offers little certainty. Doctors do exist, but their knowledge is built on ancient texts, inherited theories, and incomplete observation. They believe the body is governed by 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile. Illness, they say, comes from imbalance. Too much heat, too much moisture, too much corruption in the air. The concept of bacteria does not exist. The idea of microscopic contagion is centuries away. If you are wealthy, a physician might visit your home. He may examine your urine. He may check your pulse. He may recommend bloodletting to restore balance. Leeches or blades draw blood from your veins. Weakness follows. Some prescribe herbal mixtures, rose water, garlic, vinegar-soaked cloths held to the nose, strong scents meant to purify the air. The belief in miasma, poisoned air, dominates understanding. In later waves of plague, doctors will wear long robes and masks with beak-like shapes. Inside the beak, herbs and flowers. The mask is meant to filter foul air. It becomes an iconic image of the era. But during the earliest outbreaks, protection is minimal. Doctors fall ill as quickly as their patients. Medical knowledge cannot outrun the disease. Observation alone cannot defeat what is invisible. If you are poor, you may never see a physician. You rely on local healers, on family remedies, on prayer. You may drink bitter concoctions. You may apply poultices to swellings. Some attempt to lance the buboes, to cut them open, hoping to drain corruption. The procedure is painful and dangerous. Infections spread. Relief is rare. Isolation becomes one of the few effective strategies, though people do not fully understand why. Some towns close their gates. Ships are held offshore for weeks before docking. The idea of quarantine slowly emerges. But these measures are inconsistent. Communication between regions is slow. Knowledge spreads unevenly. What works in one town may never reach another. The plague moves faster than information. Superstition fills the gaps. Astrological alignments are blamed. Comets are seen as warnings. Earthquakes interpreted as omens. When science lacks answers, imagination supplies them. Some believe strong emotions cause vulnerability. Others believe certain foods invite sickness. You may alter your diet. Avoid particular meats. Consume others believed to strengthen the body. Evidence is scarce. And yet, despite limited understanding, small insights accumulate. Communities notice patterns. Close contact increases risk. Crowded areas suffer more. Isolation sometimes helps. Observation plants early seeds of epidemiology. You live in a time between ignorance and discovery. Close enough to observe patterns. Too early to explain them. Medicine feels both earnest and helpless. Human effort confronts microscopic power. If you survive, it is rarely because of treatment. It is because of resilience within your body, because of chance, because the bacteria did not overwhelm you fully. Medicine, in this era, is an attempt to understand a mystery still hidden. If you live in a city when the plague arrives, the experience is different from the countryside, denser, faster, more suffocating. Narrow streets trap sound and smell. Houses lean toward one another, windows almost touching. Infection moves quickly here. Markets that once overflowed with goods grow thin. Stalls stand unattended. Vendors disappear overnight. You notice shutters closed for days at a time. No explanation offered. Only absence. The city gates remain guarded, but not to keep enemies out. They attempt to keep sickness contained. Travelers are questioned. Some are turned away. Others slip through regardless. Commerce and contagion travel the same roads. In crowded districts, entire buildings fall silent. A single infected household can mean dozens of deaths. Neighbors hear coughing through walls. They hear furniture falling. Then nothing. Carts roll through streets at dawn. They collect bodies before heat intensifies the smell. Sometimes there are too many to gather at once. mass graves expand outside the city walls. In some cities, death rates reach staggering levels. Nearly half the population may vanish within months. Artisans, clerks, children, merchants. The urban heartbeat weakens. Those who can afford to flee do so early. They retreat to country estates. Some bring servants and, unknowingly, infection. Escape offers no guarantee. Distance delays, but does not always prevent. In wealthier homes, isolation is stricter. Rooms are sealed, servants dismissed, supplies stockpiled. Yet even thick walls cannot block microscopic invaders carried by fleas. The psychological toll is severe. In cities, anonymity intensifies fear. You do not know all your neighbors. You cannot track every death personally. Numbers grow abstract and terrifying. Some respond with indulgence. If death feels imminent, pleasure becomes urgent. Feasts are held behind closed doors. Wine flows freely. Music plays louder than usual. Desperation seeks distraction. Others withdraw entirely, doors barred, windows sealed. Communication reduced to shouted words across narrow alleys. Isolation deepens. Loneliness spreads alongside infection. Art begins to reflect the atmosphere. Images of skeletons appear more frequently. Paintings show death walking among the living. The dance of death becomes a common motif. No class is spared in these depictions. The wealthy die, the poor die, clergy die, officials die. Urban hierarchy offers little protection. The illusion of security collapses. You walk streets once vibrant with sound. Now footsteps echo. The city feels larger, emptier. Nature creeps back subtly. Weeds grow between stones. Silence settles heavily. If you survive in a city, you witness transformation at scale. Neighborhoods shrink. Power structures shift. Economic roles redistribute. The plague does not merely pass through. It rewrites the urban world. When nearly half a population disappears, the economy does not simply weaken, it reshapes. Labor becomes scarce. Fields lie empty. Workshops stand silent. And suddenly, those who survive hold something rare, the ability to work. Before the plague, you had little leverage. Your labor belonged to your Lord. Your obligations were fixed. Movement between villages was restricted. You accepted your position because there was no alternative. Now there are alternatives. Landowners face a crisis. Without peasants, their estates produce nothing. Without harvests, wealth evaporates. They need you more than you need them. For the first time, the balance trembles. You may be offered wages instead of traditional labor dues. You may negotiate shorter working days. You may even leave your village for higher pay elsewhere. Opportunity grows from catastrophe. Authorities attempt to halt this shift. In some kingdoms, laws are passed to freeze wages. Workers are ordered to accept pre-plague pay. Mobility is restricted again. Power resists change, but enforcement proves difficult. There are simply not enough workers. Punishing every laborer who demands higher wages becomes impractical. Economic reality defies decree. Supply and demand reshape society quietly. You begin to notice subtle changes. Clothing improves for some peasants. Diet becomes slightly richer. Meat appears more frequently on tables that once knew only bread and porridge. Survival brings unexpected advantages. Vacant homes become available. Land once unattainable can now be leased. Inheritance patterns shift dramatically. Entire family lines vanish, leaving property behind. The survivors step into empty spaces. Women, especially widows, find new roles. With husbands gone, some manage farms or businesses independently. Economic necessity opens doors that tradition once closed. Social norms bend under pressure. Guilds and cities struggle to replace lost craftsmen. Apprentices advance more quickly. Young workers gain responsibility earlier. Skill becomes valuable currency. Opportunity accelerates growth. Trade routes gradually reopen. Merchants return cautiously. Prices fluctuate wildly at first. Scarcity drives costs up. But over time, markets stabilize into new patterns. The plague's demographic shock has long-term consequences. Fewer people mean less competition for resources. Wages remain elevated in many regions for decades. Economic mobility increases slowly. This shift weakens the rigid structure of feudalism. Dependence loosens. Peasants become less tied to landowners. Social hierarchy softens at its edges. Transformation begins quietly. You might not recognize the historical significance in the moment. You are simply surviving, seeking better terms, securing food, protecting family. But history will later mark this period as pivotal. The plague devastates millions. Yet from its destruction emerges change. Economic power redistributes. Opportunities expand. The world does not return to what it was. It becomes something different. And you are living inside that shift. Just when you begin to believe the worst has passed, the rumors return. A nearby town reports new cases. A traveler collapses on the road. The word spreads quickly. The plague is back. This time the fear feels different, less shocked. More exhausted. You have lived through this before. You recognize the signs earlier, the fever, the swelling, the silence that follows. Some communities react faster. Gates close sooner. Markets shut immediately. Strangers are turned away without hesitation. Experience has replaced denial. But preparation does not guarantee safety. The disease still finds its way inside. A single rat, a single flea, a single unnoticed contact. And the pattern begins again. The emotional toll deepens. The first wave was horror. The second is despair. Hope weakens. You begin to wonder if this cycle will ever end. You may have rebuilt your household after losing family. You may have remarried, had children, replanted fields. Now you fear losing everything again. Repetition intensifies trauma. This wave may not be as deadly everywhere. Some communities fare better. Perhaps partial immunity protects a few. Perhaps isolation works more effectively. Patterns vary from place to place. Yet unpredictability remains. One village loses few. Another loses many. There is no clear logic visible to you. Chance still governs survival. You notice something else. Fear spreads faster now. People act sooner. Suspicion rises immediately. Blame ignites more quickly. Collective nerves are already strained. Children who survived the first wave now understand the danger. They do not ask as many questions. They recognize the tone in adult voices. They prepare silently. Some attempt stricter isolation. Families barricade themselves inside for weeks. Food is passed through windows. Contact minimized. Loneliness deepens. Clergy are fewer now. Medical knowledge has not advanced enough to offer solutions. The tools remain limited. Herbs, bloodletting, prayer, isolation, and yet survival continues. The plague does not erase humanity entirely. Births still occur. Crops still grow. Even amid recurrence, life persists stubbornly. You begin to see the plague not as a singular catastrophe, but as a recurring shadow. It returns unpredictably. Years may pass between waves, but the memory never fades. When the second wave finally recedes, you are older, harder, more cautious. The world feels permanently fragile. You no longer assume stability. You live knowing how quickly everything can collapse. Years have passed since the first outbreak. The graves are no longer fresh. The panic is no longer constant. But nothing is truly the same. The world you inhabit now is not the world you were born into. Entire family names have disappeared. Lineages that lasted centuries ended in months. Empty land still marks where homes once stood. Memory becomes a map of absence. Population remains lower for decades. Villages consolidate. Some settlements vanish completely. Forests reclaim former farmland. Nature fills the vacuum humanity left behind. Labor remains valuable. Wages in many regions never fully return to pre-plague levels. Survivors possess leverage unknown to their grandparents. Economic power has shifted permanently. Feudal bonds weaken gradually. Peasants negotiate more boldly. Mobility increases. Some move to towns seeking opportunity. The rigid hierarchy softens at its edges. In cities, guild structures adapt. Apprentices advance faster. Women continue managing property in greater numbers than before. Inheritance patterns have permanently altered social balance. Religion changes too. Faith remains central, but unquestioned authority erodes. The church survives, but doubt lingers quietly in the background. People remember unanswered prayers. Art transforms dramatically. Imagery of death becomes common. Skeletons, hourglasses, fading candles. The awareness of mortality seeps into culture. Life is depicted as fragile, temporary. Writers begin recording events more consciously. Chroniclers describe suffering with urgency. Memory becomes intentional. The plague will not be forgotten easily. Psychologically, a generation carries invisible scars. They expect instability. They prepare for recurrence. Security feels provisional, never absolute. This mindset shapes decisions for decades. Innovation subtly accelerates. Labor scarcity encourages efficiency. Tools improve. Agricultural practices adjust. Necessity pushes adaptation. Trade networks eventually recover, but they operate with new caution. Quarantine practices become more common in port cities. The idea of containment slowly gains legitimacy. You may not recognize that historians will later mark this period as a turning point. To you, it is simply life, harder, quieter, more fragile. Yet from this altered foundation, change spreads outward. economic mobility, shifts in power, questioning of authority. Seeds of transformation lie beneath the surface. The plague did not end the medieval world instantly, but it fractured it, and through those fractures new possibilities begin to grow. You are living at the hinge of history. If you had been born into nobility when the plague arrived, your experience would be different, but not immune. Your home would be larger, your food more abundant, your clothing finer. But disease does not respect silk or stone walls. At the first rumors of infection, your family would likely retreat. Country estates, remote manors, distance from crowded cities. You would leave quickly, hoping space equals safety. Servants would accompany you, cooks, guards, attendants. Yet every additional person increases risk. Protection and exposure arrive together. Letters would bring news from cities. Rising death counts, closed markets, fallen officials. You would read reports in candlelight, trying to measure danger from afar. Your estate might feel secure at first. Fields wide, air cleaner, fewer travelers passing through. But isolation is fragile. A single infected servant can shatter calm. If illness enters your household, fear spreads rapidly. Rooms are sealed, the sick isolated. Physicians summoned if available, prayers whispered urgently in private chapels. Even nobility loses heirs, succession becomes uncertain. If your older brother dies, responsibility shifts to you overnight. Titles pass unexpectedly. Childhood ends abruptly. Inheritance disputes may erupt. With so many deaths, lines of succession blur. Claims are challenged. Power vacuums appear. Political tension grows quietly. Financial stability also trembles. Your wealth depends on peasant labor. If half your tenants die, income collapses. Land without workers produces nothing. You may attempt to enforce previous obligations, demand labor, freeze wages, but scarcity weakens authority. Survivors negotiate from unexpected strength. Some nobles adapt wisely. They offer better terms, encourage settlement, invest in rebuilding. Others cling rigidly to old expectations and face resistance. Social prestige remains, but confidence shifts. You realize your title does not shield you from mortality. Death visits castles as easily as cottages. This awareness humbles even the powerful. Politically, instability grows. Rulers face declining tax revenue. Armies shrink. Conflicts pause or intensify unpredictably. The balance of power across regions subtly shifts. As a noble survivor, you inherit a thinner world. Fewer rivals, fewer allies, fewer guarantees. Opportunity and vulnerability intertwine. Part 15. If you endure, you rule a society transformed by absence. Your authority rests on a population that now understands its value. The plague did not abolish nobility, but it weakened its certainty. And certainty is power. When people are terrified, the mind seeks targets. Fear cannot remain abstract for long. The plague moves invisibly. But blame moves visibly, quickly, brutally. Accusations begin quietly. A stranger enters town. A woman lives on the outskirts. A family prays differently. Rumors swirl. Suspicion grows. The whispers harden into action. Shops are avoided, doors barred, neighbors watch each other closely. Small slights are magnified into danger. Some blame entire groups, foreigners, minorities, travelers, those who practice unusual customs. Hatred spreads faster than the disease itself. Violence erupts in some towns. Homes are burned. Accused are dragged from houses. Mob justice replaces legal proceedings. Chaos replaces community. Even in your village, fear changes behavior. People isolate more aggressively. Those who cough are shunned. Visitors are refused entry. Every gesture is measured. The priest warns against cruelty. The church preaches compassion, but fear is persuasive. Moral instruction often loses to instinct. Some families leave the village to avoid suspicion. Others huddle indoors, silent. Trust becomes scarce. Community bonds weaken under the strain. Blame often lands on the innocent. The real cause, microscopic fleas on rats, remains unknown. Yet the human tendency to assign guilt dominates action. Children watch this unfold. They learn early that fear can warp morality. They memorize which behaviors are punished and which can protect them. Fear reshapes social interactions. People speak less openly. Conversations are cautious. Gestures are calculated. Friendships are tentative. Even after the wave passes, memory lingers. Stories of accused innocence survive. Fear leaves a mark in communal consciousness. It shapes future responses to crisis. Communities are quieter. Suspicion becomes habitual. Small gestures of trust are rare. Social cohesion weakens, sometimes permanently. You notice a subtle truth. Fear does not disappear when danger recedes. It teaches lessons in caution, paranoia, and vigilance. And those lessons survive long after the plague fades. The plague kills bodies. Fear kills innocence and trust. Both persist in survivors' minds. You understand that social collapse begins long before the last body is buried. Survival demands adaptation. Those who endure the plague do so by observing carefully, adjusting behavior, learning from mistakes. Change becomes instinct, not choice. You notice patterns quickly, avoiding the sick, cleaning living spaces more diligently, stockpiling supplies when possible. Every small precaution matters. Communities that adapt survive better. Villages enforce quarantine more strictly. Markets open selectively. Travel is monitored. Experience guides policy before law can intervene. Families create routines, daily cleaning, isolation of anyone showing symptoms, use of protective herbs or masks. Rules that seem harsh are followed without complaint. Individuals also adjust psychologically. Fear is constant. But coping mechanisms emerge. Prayers, rituals, small comforts. Human resilience manifests in countless tiny acts. Children who witness these routines internalize survival habits. Play is structured to reduce exposure. Education becomes practical, tending animals, preparing food, avoiding contact. Some communities innovate, better drainage, improved sanitation, experimenting with herbs and treatments. They do not understand germ theory, but observation guides them. Isolation is refined. Households develop signals for illness. Visitors may be allowed only after days of observation. Communication happens cautiously through distance. Mental endurance becomes as important as physical endurance. Those who survive long outbreaks maintain vigilance, patience, and careful planning. Panic is deadly. Social bonds are preserved selectively. Trust is given carefully. Family members protected. Neighbors monitored. Resources shared strategically. You observe the development of leadership. Those who organize effectively inspire cooperation. Chaos recedes where coordination exists. Authority is earned, not assumed. Resilience is generational. Children raised during outbreaks internalize habits of caution. They grow into adults capable of navigating instability. Patterns of survival persist beyond immediate memory. Even culture adapts. Stories emphasize preparation, vigilance, and caution. Art and song reflect endurance rather than despair. Memory becomes a guide. You realize survival is never accidental. It is the result of careful observation, small adjustments, and consistent effort. Luck plays a role, but only alongside action. By the end of multiple waves, communities that adapt survive. They may not be untouched, but they endure. And from their endurance, the seeds of a more resilient society emerge. Loss is constant during the plague. Friends vanish. Family members disappear. Neighbors die quietly. Death is routine, yet it never becomes ordinary. Grief is complicated. It comes too quickly to process. Funerals are rushed. Bodies are buried in mass graves. There is little time for ceremony. You may mourn privately, in your home, alone, or with immediate family. Rituals are small, intimate, fleeting. Public mourning is rare. Communities are too afraid to gather. Crowds increase contagion risk. Expressions of sorrow must be limited. Children experience grief differently. They may not fully understand death. They observe absence, silence in homes. Empty chairs at the table. Orphans increase dramatically. Extended family may take them in. Some are left alone. Childhood responsibilities arrive early. Grief mixes with duty. Adults feel survivor's guilt. Why them? Why not someone else? Questions persist uncomfortably. You may carry this weight for decades. Even small losses accumulate. A favorite shop closes. A local artisan dies. A friend moves away to escape contagion. The sense of continuity erodes. Grief shapes behavior. You become cautious. You value safety. You cherish fleeting moments of joy more intensely. Some develop coping rituals, lighting candles, speaking prayers aloud, keeping small memorials for lost loved ones. These habits persist long after immediate danger passes. Communities that share grief survive better socially. They maintain connections. They remember collectively. They pass lessons to younger generations, yet grief also isolates. Fear of loss leads some to withdraw. People avoid closeness to reduce risk. Trust is strained. Artists and writers begin recording sorrow. Literature and painting preserve the emotional landscape. Loss becomes part of the historical memory. The plague teaches impermanence. Nothing is guaranteed. Every relationship, every possession, every routine is fragile. Awareness of mortality dominates thought. Even as life returns, grief lingers. It shapes decisions, priorities, and social bonds. You carry it silently, a permanent echo of the plague's shadow.